Many thanks to our tech team. There's Liza from McMedia AV in the corner for making it possible for people to join us virtually. We see you there. And I would like to say a special hello to those folks joining us from Quay, Canada, and from the Jewish Federation in Winnipeg. My name is Lisa Cohen Quay, and I am today's moderator. I'm a registered social worker and coordinate programs for older adults at the Jewish Community Center of Greater Vancouver. I am a member of the JQT Senior Initiative, which has been meeting monthly since early 2020 to advise and guide JQT's efforts to highlight, understand, and serve queer and trans Jewish older adults. On behalf of this group, I would like to say how much we look forward to exploring the commonalities and finding ways to fill gaps together today. Although usually people associate issues of dying and death with aging, this is everyone's issue at every age. And I encourage you to utilize the JQT Seniors Resource Guide, which Carmel will be highlighting shortly, as the information is pertinent to everyone at any age, and it's continually updated so that it can be a true resource when you need it. Here's today's schedule. First, Carmel Tanaka, Executive Director of JQT, will present background information that has informed and guided our work and led to this event. We have about half a dozen presenters representing different organizations and perspectives on the dying and death topic, specifically pertaining to queer and trans Jews in BC. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up when you have 1 minute remaining. In advance, we asked registrants to pose questions, and our presenters have been asked to respond to these questions where applicable. Presentations will be followed by a Q&A, and for additional questions that might be provided in this room or in the Zoom room that you may have. And through this sharing of information, we hope to gain insights that will get us to our underlying goal of 1 or 2 actionable and sustainable items from today's town hall, so that the JQT Senior Initiative will have your direction on where to focus next for helping the elders in our community gain access to more inclusive care. Thanks for being here in person and on Zoom, and let's get started. Carmel?
All right, thank you so much, Lisa, for welcoming us into this lovely space, which has been really generously donated to us by the city of Vancouver. So shout out to Ryan over at the city for this space. For those of you who don't know, my name is Carmel Tanaka. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the founder and executive director of JQT Vancouver, a volunteer-run Jewish, queer, and trans nonprofit dedicated to queering Jewish space and Jewifying queer space. And in this role, I also coordinate the JQT Seniors Initiative, and I'm here to introduce you to the BC Jewish, Queer, and Trans Seniors Resource Guide. And if you're just curious, the reason why there's space here is for folks on the Zoom so that they can see my poem, but also it doesn't block the text. I'm thinking about you. There's about, I don't know how many people, Max has said something like 13 have logged on, but 40 registrants. So who knows how many people are going to be on there today. So this guide, the Seniors Resource Guide, was produced by the JQT Seniors Initiative thanks to a BC Community Response Network. So thank you very much for the representative here today, Sharon. It was a project grant, also the financial support of the province of British Columbia, and a private donation from an elder in our community. It was launched in 2023 to address knowledge gaps regarding Jewish, LGBTQ, and healthcare concerns for older Jewish, queer, and or trans people across BC. This guide is a response to the needs expressed by elders who participated in our oral history project. If you haven't checked it out, you can go to our website to check that out, as well as from feedback in our community needs assessment, which is also available on our website. It is a living document. It is a Google document, and we update it as information becomes available or as we get requests to update it. The guide also includes a series of 8 videos summarizing each chapter. The first chapter is an introduction. Why are we even doing this? The next two chapters are on independence, planning ahead, interdependence. And then we get into chapters related to limited dependency, full-time care, and the focus of today is on end of life and funeral considerations. I'm going to play for you the videos from the last two chapters. They're each a couple minutes long. The room will be able to hear it here as well as in the Zoom room. And if there are any issues with hearing, especially in the Zoom room, please let Maxa know to let me, and then we will let our tech know. Are you an older Jewish queer and or trans person entering palliative or hospice care? In addition to palliative or hospice care, this section will also cover if you end up in the hospital and would like to receive spiritual health care. We provide links from each health authority across BC in the resource guide. What important considerations do you need to make as a Jewish queer and or trans person at this stage? Hospice or palliative care can be delivered at home, in hospital, or anywhere you reside. There is no LGBTQ-specific palliative or hospice care in BC. There is Jewish palliative or hospice care provided at the Louis Brier Fort's residence. The daily cost for palliative or hospice care may be similar to that of long-term care depending on where the care is provided. How are you navigating civil and Jewish law systems? If you end up in a Jewish assisted living or long-term care home that follows Orthodox Jewish law, it may conflict with services such as MAID, medical assistance in dying. If you have a partner or spouse or family of choice, will they be recognized and respected? Will they be involved in your care and treatment planning or other decision-making according to your wishes? What services and support will be available to your loved ones after your death? What end-of-life needs as a Jewish queer and or trans person do you have? We reached out to an employee of Island Health, and they shared that within hospice and palliative care, they have been given training regarding not using dead names or misgendering residents. Most staff, as a small example, wear badges with their preferred pronouns as an indication of support and awareness. For patients seeking access to spiritual leaders, they have spiritual care providers at all the hospitals in Victoria, and staff also know how to contact religious leaders in the community. We also reached out to rabbis from different denominations across BC and asked if they do regular hospital, hospice, or palliative care visits for any Jews, regardless if they are congregants. Answers vary and are listed in the resource guide. Please note that this video highlights the main points covered in this section. To access the resource guide in its entirety, please visit www.jqtvancouver.ca. The next video will cover information about final arrangements. And here's the next video. Have you made final arrangements that reflect your Jewish and LGBTQ values and beliefs? What important considerations do you need to make as a Jewish queer and or trans person at this stage? Having clear instructions in your will on where and how you wish your remains to be dealt with and remembered is important. This includes, for example, Jewish burial, civic burial, cremation, human composting, green burial, Jewish ritual ceremony, celebration of life, etc. But the will may not be easily findable or accessible, and Jewish arrangements in particular need to be made quickly within 24 hours of the time of death. You must make advanced preparations, such as buying a plot if applicable, starting payments, telling your family, friends, and loved ones. Do not leave it for the people to arrange upon finding details in your will. There are several Jewish cemeteries in BC run by various synagogues, and each have their own policies. There are 4 Chevra Kadisha organizations in BC, one in Vancouver, Victoria, Kelowna, and Richmond. And there is an ad hoc burial society for a small Jewish section in the civic cemetery on the Sunshine Coast with a relationship with a local funeral home. Chevra Kadisha are Orthodox Jewish people who prepare the bodies of deceased Jews for Jewish burial. In Victoria, the cost of plot, burial, and funeral services, including headstone, ranges from $15.5K to $30K. Learn more at Victoria and Vancouver Island Jewish Burial Society. In Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, the cost of plot, burial, and funeral services, not including headstone, which ranges from $800 to $25K, ranges from $18,000 to $35,000. Learn more at Sheretz Tzedek Cemetery Board. In comparison, the average cost of a traditional civic burial ranges from $5,000 to $10,000, and cremation ranges from $2,000 to $5,000 in Canada. Human composting is not yet legal in Canada. There may be Jewish and other organizations to help with this financial burden, such as CPP Death Benefit, a provincial benefit available to people who have no resources to pay through the deceased's estate, which needs to be applied for before you purchase or pay for anything. This is important to know because Jewish funerals happen quickly. You do not need to have been on social assistance or persons with a disability assistance to qualify, and the province may pay several $1,000s. And finally, last post fund available for Canadian veterans. If you are a trans or non-binary person, it is especially important that you take steps so that you are not dead named or misgendered after your death. Again, we stress the importance of having clear instructions in your will, especially for the maker of a headstone or the writer of your obituary. Please plan ahead about who will be involved and also who might oppose your wishes. In 2023, Chevrah Kadisha in BC performs according to male or female genitalia. We reached out to all 4 Chevrah Kadisha in BC, as well as rabbis from various denominations across BC, asking them questions directly related to their services and experience with LGBTQ inclusion and intermarriage. Answers vary and are listed in great detail in the resource guide, where you will also find a full glossary and links to additional resources. Please note that this video highlights the main points covered in this section. To access the resource guide in its entirety, please visit www.jqtvancouver.ca. All right, so we received pretty amazing feedback on our resource guide, and the JQT Seniors Initiative now wants to find out who is caring for Jewish, queer, trans seniors in BC. Come on in. So we can focus our time and energy with those serving this population with additional support and training. So who is caring for Jewish, queer, trans seniors? We have just done an incredible continuation of our seniors resource guide. We did an outreach survey where we sent out our survey to literally every care home, every care provider, assisted living, community centers, anyone who takes care of seniors and older adults. And they've been filling out the survey. And the survey answers so far confirm what we already know, that there is a vast lack of knowledge on Jewish and LGBTQ needs and the ways in which they intersect. So we're currently building a cohort of participants for a Jewish queer trans staff training workshop in the fall 2024. So stay tuned for that. The JQT Seniors Initiative will be available to help anybody who's interested in taking that. And part of this outreach survey is to also create a public-facing database to help seniors organizations, as well as seniors themselves, to locate Jewish, queer, and trans-inclusive services. One of the biggest issues that we found, and this was in the community needs assessment, as well as when we were talking in the oral history project, this fear of having to go back into the closet as someone who's LGBTQ, but also having to hide one's Jewish identity. And so they're wondering, well, where can I go as I get older? Where would be a safe place as a Jewish, queer, trans person? I don't know who's taken LGBTQ training. I don't know who's taken any Jewish training, because a lot of the time DEI training doesn't include the barriers that Jewish people face. So to be able to have a public-facing document so people know where there's been efforts made to be more inclusive will be very helpful. All right, these next 2 slides will probably make my mom very happy, because I do have a master's in public health, and so I am bringing this finally to JQT. The big question is, well, how many people are we actually talking about here? And so I think this is an important discussion to have. So BC's population is about 5 million, of which there are about 35,000 Jews. And of those Jews who are 65 and over, we're looking at 6,800 in the province of BC. Now, in terms of how many of those will actually be queer and trans, there isn't a lot of data around that, but the percentages range from 3% in rural areas and up as high as 10% in urban areas. And I was told that another study says that it's as high as 12% in cities. So if we take that into consideration, then we are looking at anywhere from 200 to 700 queer trans Jews over the age of 65 here in BC. And how does that relate to death and mortality rate? So if we are looking at 45,000 deaths per year in BC, then roughly approximately 300 Jewish deaths per year. This was Howard's number provided to us. We are looking at anywhere from 10 to 30 queer trans Jewish deaths per year. Okay. Now, if we look towards the future, starting in the next couple of years, that will increase to as up as 30. And then 10 years time from now, we're looking to as up as 45. And these lovely numbers were lovingly data crunched as well from Paige Knorr, who is also here today, and couldn't have done this without you. So thank you very much. So as I said, solid data does not exist on the numbers of Jewish deaths in BC, nor the number of queer trans Jews. So this is an guesstimation to the best of our abilities. To ballpark the number of queer trans Jewish deaths, we can guesstimate using the Canadian census data on the percentage of Jews in BC. And that 3 to 10% is an estimation provided by the BC Care Providers Association for the rate of those who will be queer and trans. There's also shifting demographic patterns, for example, higher rates of queer trans Jews in younger age brackets, meaning the number of deaths may be higher than this estimate in later years to come as more on trans and non-binary people age. These estimates assume the mortality rate is also steady across all segments of the population, meaning Jews and queer trans people have the same mortality rate, which is likely not the case. All right, so what can help us understand the population in need? So here are some current services and population factors. Vancouver's Chevra Kadisha, roughly 140 to 160 deaths per year across denominations. That is including secular Jews, of which that's approximately 50% of Jewish deaths per year in BC, because we said it was 300 on the previous slide. Vancouver's Chevra Kadisha also has cared for at least one transgender person to date, and roughly 60% of these deaths are associated with a synagogue or religious Jewish organization. And all of these deaths, these people have been buried in cemeteries or sections thereof designated for Jewish people. Now, in terms of mortality risks, sexual minority respondents to Canadian Community Health Survey, as well as the Canadian Mortality Database, had higher all-cause mortality. And trans adolescents have 5 times the risk of suicide ideation and 3.6 times the risk of suicide attempt compared to cisgender heterosexual youth. This is according to the Canadian Medical Association Journal. And in regards to trans and non-binary population, according to the 2021 census data reported, 0.44% of BC residents aged 15 plus are transgender or non-binary, which could estimate around 150 trans or non-binary Jews in BC. Some things to take into consideration: death care for Jewish queer people, especially trans and non-binary folks, will increase, and so will the demand to create more inclusive policies and rituals to respect the wishes of these individuals and how they live their lives. Many Jewish, queer, and trans people are not members of synagogues, yet cemetery plots are members only, with the exception of Sheretz Tzedek's Orthodox. This was a note to myself that Sheretz Tzedek is an Orthodox synagogue. The cost is very high and may present a barrier to accessing a Jewish burial. And of those in relationships, more than half of the Jewish, queer, trans community are in mixed relationships. And you can take a look at this in our community needs assessment. And so some issues that may not just be specific to the queer and trans community, but any of the people in the Jewish community who are secular like myself growing up in mixed relationships, the issues of burial and intermarriage do come up. So while we were asking people to register to our event today, we asked in advance for questions from people here as well as in the Zoom room. And we asked what they would like presenters to specifically address. And here are your questions up here. And I'm sure that there will be more in our Q&A after the presentations. And we know that there will be some questions probably submitted in the Zoom room, in the chat, or we might have people come onto the Zoom and ask themselves. But I'm going to read them just to have them fresh in our minds as we move forward. Is there something we can do now to prepare traditional Jewish institutions for potential trans folk who wish to have traditional Jewish burials? I am Jewish and my partner is not Jewish. We are not members of a synagogue and don't intend to be. While it's not important for me to be buried in a Jewish cemetery, I would like to have a Jewish funeral with Jewish burial rituals and blessings performed. How can we be accommodated? Will Chevrah Kadisha prepare a Jewish body with Jewish ritual for a public cemetery burial? What about for cremation? What steps are Chevrah Kadisha taking in order to respect non-binary bodies? And those in the dying and death sphere seem to be siloed from one another. How can we collaborate and work together to meet the needs of LGBTQ+ Jews? Can there be a protocol that gets initiated when a member in the LGBTQ+ Jewish community passes away? And so I asked the presenters today whether you are in person giving a presentation or online giving a presentation to keep these questions in mind so that we can address these together and then whatever comes up after. So I'm going to give the mic back to Lisa to invite the presenters.
Okay, thanks, Carmel. Our first speaker is Rabbi Hannah Dresner. Is she here? Okay. From Or Shalom and their exploration of creating a Chevra Kadisha. Yep. Thank you for being here.
I'll just stand over here. It's just, I think you'd see my eyes up. Hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Hannah Dresner, the senior rabbi at Or Shalom. And I think JQT is aware that we are very interested in issues that confront or that are presented to the queer Jewish community and in celebrating, what is it? The queering of Jewish spaces and the, help me, Carmel. What's the other half? All of it. We are really jazzed by it, and I think that's sort of evidenced in the attendance here this morning of so many members of Or Shalom, not representing Or Shalom, Pat Gill and Aviva and Rabbi Yoni and Paige. So we really are excited about this venture. What I'd like to report to you is that Or Shalom is thinking about starting a small Chevrah Kadisha that would not interfere with our participation in the Sharet Tzedek communal Chevra, in the sense that if someone dies in our community, that would be our first go-to, and we also provide members of our community to serve on the men's and women's Chevra. But there are cases that come up that cannot comfortably be dealt with by the Sharet Tzedek Chevra and Cemetery Board, and we don't feel that it's appropriate to push the Orthodox community to do something that might be not in keeping with their adherence to halacha. So it's our interest to create a small chevra that might literally, the tools for which might be housed in a couple of large Rubbermaid containers that are housed, let's say, at a funeral home, and train up folks that are prepared to come forward when we want to give a tahara to someone who will be cremated, or we want to give a tahara to someone who will be buried in a non-Jewish cemetery, although we might go and consecrate their plot as a little tiny Jewish cemetery, or someone whom the cemetery board doesn't consider to be Jewish, but we do. And of course, queer and trans community. Right now, what I would say is that anything that we do, any trainings that we do, we've already had one small introductory training. We would be happy to share and down the line collaborate as much as possible, whether that means that the same people would serve on these chevras, or whether it means that it might be some overlap, or whether it means that we simply share the expense of facilities. We're very open to those conversations. If Or Shalom goes forward to create a chevra, we would also be looking at the review and tweaking or creation of perhaps different liturgy. And we, I think, or I would say, I believe that trans community really needs to be completely involved in the creation of those rituals and those liturgies that are going to pertain to that population. So there might be, a variety of liturgies that are appropriate, but it's all on the table and open for conversation. And of course, I'm very interested in hearing what the Chevra and what the board has to say at this point, because everything evolves and there may still be more room for even more participation with the general Chevra. No questions now? Okay.
Okay, our next speaker also doesn't have slides. Lianne Palminrose from the Vancouver Chevra Kadisha.
All right. Is this good? All right. So I really just want to introduce myself because I don't know if a lot of you know who I am, and I have a lot of different hats that I wear in this community around death and dying and around the LGBTQ community. So I'm Lianne Palminrose. I am currently the head of the Chevrah Kadisha. I've also been working for the Chevrah Kadisha 25 plus years. I am trained as an end-of-life doula. I also worked palliative care when I was an occupational therapist. So that's my death care hat. My LGBTQ hat is that I'm an ally. I have 2 adult trans children. I have 2 non-binary grandchildren. So I'm quite steeped in that community, not in Vancouver because they're in Ontario. So these are the hats I wear coming into this conversation. What I want to frame around the Chevrah Kadisha, the Vancouver Chevra Kadisha, as it is now, is it is, yes, absolutely under an Orthodox umbrella. The Sharet Zedek Cemetery Board is the, is the governing body. Rabbi Rosenblatt is the rabbi I would go to, or we would go to ask any questions from. So it is, given that framework, we work within that to address any issues. And the other thing I need to say about the Chevra Kadisha is the policy is that we bury every Jew. And as far as trans folks and non-binary folks, right early on, because of my history and my family, the trans question came up very early on in working on the Chevra Kadisha. And I can say that there is not an issue halachically, Jewish-wise, Orthodox-wise, in burying trans folks. Women are permitted to bury either gender at any given time. I think, maybe going back to those days way back when men had to go to war or whatever, women could bury, anyone. So it's not based on genitalia. It's based on that women can bury anyone and can prepare bodies for anyone, not bury, but prepare bodies. The second thing I want to say that we've started addressing, I think within the last month or so, as I sat down with Rabbi Rosenblatt to develop a non-binary liturgy. with the existing liturgy. Again, it has to, for us, it has to be within the umbrella of Orthodoxy and the Orthodox liturgy, but there are ways of adjusting the liturgy so that it isn't gender specific, and we've been working together on that. So those are a couple of the initiatives that one of the halachas and one of the initiatives that we started. And I'm really here just to answer questions as they come up, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of them. So yeah, thanks for letting me talk and introduce myself.
Thanks, Lianne. Our next speaker is Howard Jampolsky to answer questions on behalf of the Chevrah Kadisha Cemetery Board.
Thank you very much. It's this is a wonderful space, isn't it? And we have performed some funeral services in here because we have our Jewish section of Mountain View Cemetery just down the way. It's not been there very long. It's only been there since 1890, actually 1892. But it's a wonderful space. Of course, the cemetery board has expanded, and we have our main cemetery in New Westminster and a cemetery out in Surrey. I just want to address something before we get started. Rabbi Dresner and I have a wonderful relationship. We have spoken many times. Yes, the Chevrah Kadisha is a Orthodox synagogue, but the Chevrah Kadisha Cemetery Board serves the entire Jewish community. If you were not born Jewish and you converted with Rabbi Dresner, we are going to take care of you. There's no questions about that. We only take care of Jewish people, but we recognize the conversions that anybody would get from a recognized Jewish institution. So if you bought it on the back of a matchbook, we may have an issue. But if you went to Rabbi Dresner, that would be fine. If you went to the Temple Shalom or the Beth Israel or any synagogue, you are kosher for burial in our cemetery. And I would also tell you that we don't distinguish between people, how they are, who they are, how they live their lives. If you are Jewish and you pass away, and I have a feeling that all of us are going to do that one day, although the jury's still out on that. I'm still hoping for better. But the fact of the matter is that we are going to take care of people. We're going to do it with the utmost of respect. And we're evolving and trying to find ways to service the needs of our entire community in the best possible way that we can. I know there were some questions up there on the board a few minutes ago, and if you put them up, I can do, is that what you'd like me to do? Or we're going to do something else first? Oh, okay, fantastic.
Oh, we need a password.
Okay. While we're doing that. Oh, there's the question. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so there's a few questions here that when I saw them, I thought, okay, I get asked these questions all the time. So let me jump in on these ones, and if there's others, I'm certainly happy to jump in. Is there something we can do now to prepare Jewish institutions for potential trans folks who wish to have traditional Jewish burials? This is something that we are currently working on. Lianne alluded to that. And we're just trying to, we've always been able to take care of anybody, but we're trying to do it in ways that are moving the needle forward, trying to make people more comfortable with what they would like. And I think that's well underway. And it's completely under the supervision of our Orthodox Rabbi Rosenblatt. And he is grabbing onto this as well. Just because we're Orthodox doesn't mean we're living in the past or we have our heads buried in the sand. We are a modern Orthodox synagogue, and we are working hard on this. Someone says, I'm Jewish and my partner is not Jewish. We're not members of a synagogue, and I don't intend to be. While it's not important for me to be buried in a Jewish cemetery, I would like to have Jewish funeral with Jewish burial rituals and blessings performed. How can we accommodate? Unfortunately, we only can, we believe that a Jewish burial from the beginning to the burial is one thing. Now, I know that there's going to be differing opinions, and other institutions and organizations are going to be able to do what they do. But if you come to the Chevrah Kadisha Cemetery Board, we can only perform a burial in a consecrated Jewish cemetery. There are exceptions, which would have to be reviewed by a rabbi. For example, we performed a burial a number of years ago. Actually, it was on Tisha B'Av, because I remember it was sizzling hot. We couldn't eat or drink, driving up to Pemberton, to a cemetery in Pemberton, where a young man who tragically died lived, and we performed the Jewish burial there. Now, he had his tahara with us, but the burial took place because he lived in a community that did not have a Jewish cemetery. So there are, oh, I didn't realize I was on a time. Anyways, okay, I'll be quick. For cremation, I'm afraid we draw the line on cremation, and we will not perform a tahara for somebody who will be cremated. We will also not provide tachrachim or any kind of guidance or assistance to a general funeral home on that, and that is just our policy, because we believe that cremation goes against is very hardcore against what we believe in. And the other question is, it's not so much for me, but it may be for one of the other panelists. But again, I'm here. I can answer any of your questions, and we're going to be respectful of everybody who comes through the Shared Tzedek Cemetery Board. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Charles E. Steele from the Chevrah Kadisha. Right. We have a virtual speaker. Is that what's happening? Okay. Yeah. Terrific.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
It's a good chance to go get a snack or a beverage.
Myself. It's really weird. Okay, I'm just going to try to share my presentation. 1 second. So it says that the host has disabled screen sharing. Is there someone who could please enable screen sharing for me? Oh, great. Thank you. All right. Can everyone see the presentation? Can I get a thumbs up from someone? I can't see properly. Thank you all. All right. So it's lovely to meet all of you. My name is Sil. I'm from Vancouver's progressive community-based Chevrah Kadisha and learning community, which we also sometimes call Qualia's Collective or Collective Gali, which means waves in Yiddish and Hebrew respectively. Yeah, I want to just recognize that there might be some folks in the audience or in the online space who have also been part of this, and just want to recognize that and appreciate all of you. So I want to start off with a thank you. I first just want to thank to all the teachers out there who are supporting us in doing this work. I want to send a thank you to my teachers, Nina Rubin, the Kavod B'Nechum community, where I've been a student for over 2 years, my Yiddish teachers, the queer and trans Jewish community, the chronic illness and disability community, and all my ancestors and family who have passed their wisdom down, whether through writing, singing, chicken soup, or whispering in the street. I gratefully acknowledge that much of this presentation has been directly and indirectly influenced and shaped by my teachers. I send a warm thank you, Hartzik Dank. I also want to thank the growing community Chevrah. Thank you to all who have participated in our ongoing conversations. meals, ideation, building, and design. I send a warm thank you, a Hearts of Kingdom. I also want to send a thank you to the Indigenous communities whose land we are on. Our lives are deeply interconnected, and may our work caring for our ancestors and loved ones support you in your work. So why are we here talking about, this specific question around queer and trans dying and death support? So, by the way, is there a way that I can hide the screen with the videos of the participants? It's kind of blocking the screen for me.
We have you spotlighted right now. If you're trying to hide the screen with the other participants, on your top
Try to
right-hand corner of your screen, there's a view option.
Okay, I've managed to do it. Thank you.
Did you find it? Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, and if there's something wrong, I can't see anyone, so just please unmute and let me know.
Yeah, let us know, we're here.
Thank you. Okay, so as Jews, our heritage teaches us that care for the dead, while clearly not as important as care for the living, is a huge and vital part of our lives. Our ancestral rituals around death are beautiful, rich, and vital for all Jews to have access to as they move through what may be the most difficult and mysterious transition. We all die. Many believe that while we do these rituals, the neshama of the Meitah, or the person who has and is transitioning, is in the room. They are there with us and they are watching us as they may be speaking to us and giving us wisdom around how to best perform this work. We apologize for any mistakes we've made and are going to make before and after we do Tahara rituals, in order to ensure that we let the person who is in transition know that we are doing our very best, that our kavanah, our intention, is good. So to be totally honest, I started doing this work because I lost someone very close to me in my life. And at that time, I didn't know about all of our rituals. I began to learn and study with knowledgeable teachers and in Havruta, and gathered community and friends to discuss what inclusive rituals could look like for us and what we needed. This was about 2.5 years ago. When I was ready to perform my first Tahara, after about over a year of studying and connecting, I reached out to an existing community that wasn't queer specific, to see if I could participate in Tahara ritual, and part to learn, but also to be part of this holy work that is so important. At first, I was told that I wasn't allowed to participate in doing the Tahara because I was having discussions with queer and trans community on the side about how to make it more inclusive. The queer and trans community-based Chevrah Kadisha community that we are creating together is a slow but steady and beautiful moving project. We welcome all Jews who want to participate, whether or not they belong to a synagogue, and center care and love towards queer and trans Jews, a beating heart of our community. We are planting seeds for different types of participation, workshops, learning, agreements with different Jewish communities to get involved and be part of this and be supported by us.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, I want to draw attention to 2 upcoming projects and invite folks to get involved right now. The first project is a queer and trans deeply inclusive space centering queer and trans people, to have these discussions about grief, end of life, and death care. That's coming up on Sunday, March 17th, or Xanadar 2, which is one of the days, usually Xanadar 1 or 2. It's a traditional day to talk about this work. The second project is a Jewish herbalism for end of life, death, and grief project and resource that a number of Jewish herbalists are coming together, and death and care and support workers are putting together to better understand our practices in connection to plants during this time. And the call for submissions is currently open.
Okay, I'm going to need to.
This is my last slide. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in conclusion, we have a lot of beautiful things coming, and we're working on many different, in making this space truly inclusive. You can follow us at Community Chevra on Instagram, which is our Instagram that we're starting. Email communitychevra@proton.me and get involved by signing up at tinyurl.com/communitychevra or tinyurl.com/ you can also send your submissions for the Jewish Herbalism Project at that submissions link, and I'll send Carmel my slides so that she can send them out to everybody afterwards to get involved. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think our next speaker is also virtual, yes?
Yes.
Jen Marchbank on recommendations from the Indigo Project on LGBTQ plus elder abuse.
Thank you. I'm just going to, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Could you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes, just give me one moment.
So whilst we're waiting for this to come up, I'll just explain that I'm talking about a recent project completed here in the Lower Mainland called the Indigo Project. And some of you have heard from us before, and thank you so very much for giving us the space to share our findings again. We completed the project, which has been published as a book on elder abuse in the queer and trans communities. And today I'm just going to speak a little bit about I can share my slides, what we found and what our recommendations for practice will be. May I now share my slides? Is that possible?
Yes, Jen, you should be good to go.
Okay, so I will just share screen.
We can see your screen.
Yes, okay, so I'm part of the team, which was Claire Robson, myself, and Gloria Gutman, all of us from SFU. Our project was to look at the narratives of people who had experienced both identifying as queer or trans, as elder and as abuse. It was in a partnership with community. And as you can see here, these were the team members involved. We feel that we are the first people in the English-speaking world anyway that has talked to people about their actual stories and experiences of abuse, rather than it being large quantitative surveys, etc. So as you can see, the types of abuse covered in our study were in-home care, institutions, residential care, within romantic relationships, and within the wider lesbian community. So as some of you will know, we basically recruited people and supported them in telling their stories concerning violence, physical abuse, neglect, and abuse in long-term care and by home care staff. We also offered, through community, trauma-informed therapy and as a community support group as well. As you will probably not be surprised, there is a hangover from our relationship with healthcare professionals. Our respondents told us that their relationships with healthcare professionals was not great, And mostly because those of us who lived through the AIDS epidemic are left with a deep distrust of healthcare, and the fact that many doctors, nurses, and elder care providers still exhibit a lack of knowledge around homo and transphobia. So as such, we are less likely to visit our primary carers, and when we do, we are less likely to come out and seek culturally appropriate care. Of course, we found that our respondents were still deeply affected by the systemic cultural environment. Our cohort of queer elders had lived through times where being gay was a crime or an illness. Many of us were forced to live in the closet because we couldn't make our partnerships legal. Our financial arrangements were often informal, leaving people vulnerable to financial abuse. We experience constant microaggressions and slights. And interestingly, not interestingly, but if you are part of a population that is not counted, then no local authority or no government or no health authority has even identified LGBTQ older people as existing, then there's no data to argue for services. Thus, all of these made our population more vulnerable to tolerating and accepting high levels of abuse, just along the lines of, well, that attitude of, well, this is just the way it's always been. I've always been an outsider. This is the best I'm going to get. So I'm now going to focus on what differences we found with LGBTQ elder abuse compared to heterosexual elders. And I will say now that we found many, many similarities, but what are the specific differences? Well, the already mentioned systemic cultural violence. A number of our respondents spoke about, when we asked them to speak about abuse experience as an elder, started at age 4 and told us stories of a lifetime of abuse. So it seemed to be increasing vulnerability. Also, the differences are in this organizational violence, suspicious of healthcare, lack of trans care, overt homophobic attitudes and comments in both residential and home care. But in home care, you've got the lack of supervisors, so there's another level there. And also, we had people speak of being rejected in their faith communities.
We've got 1 minute.
Thank you. We also found homophobia and transphobia existed in a spectrum amongst our respondents. They were able to cite incidences of overt homophobia, for example, 2 home care aides going into one of our respondents' houses and joking about how they go down to San Francisco to laugh at the queers. Others more covert, we had people saying, well, I know the police didn't intervene. I know it's homophobia, I just can't prove it. So everybody's talked about the assumption of cis heteronormativity, this assumption that queer seniors are asexual and not queer. And we also found examples of having lived a lifetime of homophobia and transphobia, of that being internalized. So on my final slide are our recommendations to service providers. And that's to service providers whilst you're living, but I think also death and doula services as well, that there must not be an assumption of cis or heteronormative identity, nor must we force clients to disclose, but we should have intake procedures that would allow for disclosure if desired. We require queer competency training for all, especially on the ground staff, and for that to be ongoing. And an awareness of the complex history of gender and sexual minority people. So not just signage that you're a safe place, but events and media to be available that is inclusive, to use inclusive language, and to have zero tolerance of any homo or transphobic behaviour. Ideally, we would love to see increased availability of affordable counselling. And for those of us working in the field, we recognise that further research is required. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much for the time and the invitation.
Thank you so much. Our final speaker is Aviva Rathbone.
I'm going to figure out a way to slide this laptop. Yep. I'll try not block things. Okay. So thank you everybody for being here today. For folks who don't know me, my name is Aviva Rathbone and I'm the current chair of JQT. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm really happy to be here today with folks discussing such an important topic. And I'm really happy to see how so many various groups are addressing the needs of our community. It certainly lightens the load of JQT. And at JQT, Jewish, queer, and trans senior care is one of our priorities. Our priorities are set by the LGBTQ+ community, determined by our 2022 Community Needs Assessment, which has been referenced several times, and I think should be required reading for all community leaders in the Jewish and queer community. So if you haven't checked it out, it can be found online on our website. And all of our needs as queer Jews, queer and trans Jews, are interconnected. This program that you're at today is the second in our mental health support initiative, which is a series of workshops and events throughout the year to support mental health in a Jewish and queer competent way. It's also part of JQT Seniors Initiative, which you've heard about today, an initiative to provide better support for Jewish, queer, and trans seniors. Both of these are direct asks of the Jewish, queer, and trans community, and they were asked of JQT because they are not being fulfilled elsewhere. We are working with important community partners, some of whom are here today to address these asks. Our seniors initiative also includes an outreach survey currently being circulated to folks inside and outside of the community and folks involved with seniors care and housing. We're still collecting data from that survey. However, preliminary results from the survey have indicated there's another gap, and this one in knowledge. Many outside of the queer, trans community or outside of Jewish community or both don't have the lived experience of what it's like to specifically be an LGBTQ+ Jew right now. And it is a unique experience and one that very much shapes many of the topics talked about today. And so to help with that, I'm going to bring some of that context into this conversation to provide context for what the lived experience is for many Jewish, queer, and trans people in BC right now. I will be talking about the elephant in the room, the current issue at front of mind for all queer Jews right now, to ground our conversations. I'm not talking about this to bring it to the forefront of this event as a topic of conversation. JQT has already hosted an event to hold space for this important conversation, our Listen and Be Heard event that took place on February 11th and was the first of our mental health series. Before I begin to talk about something that is difficult for many of us and brings up a lot, I want to make it explicit that as an organization, JQT adopted a policy several years ago that states we do not make public statements on anything Israel-Palestine related. This was not a choice made lightly by our board and was one made after many long conversations about the spectrum of lived experiences and voices and opinions in our queer and trans Jewish community. It is also not a choice we continue to uphold lightly. It is a conscious and difficult decision by a board as impacted by the events in Israel and Palestine as anyone else. Our board recognizes that any statement we made or make will isolate members of our community and will therefore be counter to our role and mandate to advocate for the needs of all queer and trans Jewish people. What I am sharing today does not necessarily reflect the views of the board or of JQT as an organization, but they are the experiences, feelings, and history of our queer and trans Jewish community. And before talking about those lived experiences today, it is important to know that queer and trans Jewish community in Vancouver has long grappled with very vocal pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist sentiment and actions. This is not new to our community and has a long history. It is well documented in JQT's oral history timeline, which is an important resource that's available online. And one example of this history that I pulled is in 2014, Yad B'Yad, a group of Jewish, gay, and lesbian professionals and allies funded by CJA, advertised an image of intertwining pride and Israeli flags with the message Mazel Tov on 26 years of queer cinema in Vancouver. This graphic can be seen on the JQT oral history timeline. They advertised this in the Jewish Pride official Vancouver Pride Guide, extra newspaper, and the Vancouver Queer Film Festival program. Yad B'Yad received negative feedback from the Vancouver Queer Film Festival and was accused of pinkwashing. The president of Out on Screen informed Yad B'Yad that all flags moving forward will be banned except the Pride flag, and Yad B'Yad's advertisement will be pulled and the fee donated to a pro-BDS charity. Because of this, for a long time, there were no Jewish organizations marching in the Vancouver Pride Parade. when JQT took up the mantle in 2022 to bring a Jewish presence to the Pride Parade, we had to navigate a number of hurdles that indicated to us that the Vancouver Pride Society was still not completely, entirely open to all Jews. In fact, many of our oral history participants noted they had negative experiences as Jews in queer community. Here are a few quotes, but you can see videos online. Gay people are more likely, oh, I'm definitely going to go over. Gay people are more likely to be anti-Semitic than Jewish people are homophobic. For a number of years, I was pretty uptight because people would sometimes make anti-Israel or anti-Jewish comments, and some of them still do. Another quote, I have had to put up with stuff like the Israel thing. It's been harder being Jewish in the gay community than gay in Judaism. I've just avoided going to Pride altogether. Another person said, I've always found that I've been accepted for being gay in the Jewish community. I've not always been accepted for being Jewish in the queer community. Since October 7th, we have heard from many queer and trans Jews in our community who are grieving the horrific loss of life in Israel and Gaza, and on top of that are grieving loss of their entire support network, their communities, their queer family here at home. It has been made clear to us that the queer community here has become an explicitly unwelcome or unsafe place for many queer and trans Jews, as it tends to see the situation in Israel and Palestine in very black and white terms and leaves no room for the rest, which is where many of us reside. We have heard that even seeing Palestinian flags and hearing chants from the river to the sea, regardless of one's political stance, increases stress and blood pressure for many. Some examples of other specific examples in the queer community to help give folks an understanding of the current context include we have heard of an Israeli barred from entry at a queer event because of their Israeli accent. A popular queer events organizer refusing entry to anyone who does not show evidence of pro-Palestinian activism or actions, a local queer film festival making a statement classifying all Israeli submissions as pinkwashing, many queer organizations making hurtful and harmful statements online, queer Jews feeling uncomfortable on campuses because of posters and protests, queer Jews forced out of sports or activities, social groups, and professional spaces. We have heard specifically from Israelis who are in deep pain because they feel there is no place in the queer communities for their grief, and much, much more. We also know that there are those in the queer and trans community who identify as anti-Zionist, putting them at odds with much of mainstream Jewish community, and so they are feeling ostracized as well. We know this is weighing heavily on the mental health of many in our community and has had a devastating effect on our community in so many ways. Already vulnerable folks, some of whom don't have access to their biological family, have now lost their chosen families, support systems, and communities, or are feeling the need to remain silent in their deep pain. JQT hosted a Listen and Be Heard event on February 11th, the first of our mental health support series. This event brought together queer and trans Jews to talk about their feelings and experiences in a safe and supportive environment. We had participants from across the political spectrum who were united in two clearly overarching feelings: deep grief and fear. This is important for folks outside of the queer community to understand right now, especially in the context of end-of-life care and long-term care homes, because those who don't have family, are alone in these homes without support, are scared. We have long heard from our seniors that they are scared of having to go back into the closet as queer people once they enter long-term care homes. We have heard the current intake process for folks entering health authority care homes does not ask if someone is queer or trans, and there is a whole world of needs of care specifically for the queer and trans community. Now many Jews are also scared to identify themselves as Jewish, as it's not a safe time for many of us. We've heard this is not necessarily because of the care homes themselves, some of which have DEI policies, but because most DEI work doesn't include anti-Semitism and also doesn't ensure our seniors will end up in communities where they feel safe to be themselves. They're worried they may end up living with folks who are anti-Semitic, homophobic, transphobic, or all three. Queer and trans Jewish seniors, like all queer and trans Jews right now, need specialized supports that attend to their needs. Today, we are hearing from our seniors that it is not enough for care homes and other senior supports to undertake DEI training, have queer, trans, or Jewish staff or community members. Queer and trans Jewish seniors need more to attend to their specific needs. And today is a good first step towards that, as folks can listen to and hear directly from those in our community about their needs and concerns. I'm so proud of JQT, who will continue to provide support like this and others in our others asked of us in our JQT mental health series, because these are asked directly from our community. We are an entirely volunteer-run organization with very limited capacity and funding who do this work because we are passionate about supporting our community, a historically and contemporarily underserved community. And we are providing supports to LGBTQ+ Jews in a time when it's incredibly hard to be Jewish, let alone run a Jewish organization, as I know many in the room understand. I'm so proud of our board and of Carmel for doing this important work, while also grappling with loss of family members and friends, deep grief, fear, and uncertainty. But we cannot do this work of addressing the 13 calls to action from our 2022 community needs assessment and supporting our community during this difficult time alone. And we cannot do it without the grace and support of community. I'm so glad to see folks attending today's event in person and virtually, and hope that this translates into direct action, hopefully in this next hour together. I ask that folks listen and really listen with an open heart and open mind to what's being shared today. Some stories may resonate, while others may not, but they are all valid and all important for us to hear and attend to as a community. I fully believe that in a world where it seems increasingly challenging to open our hearts to others, deep and true radical empathy is what will heal, and I'm looking forward to the next hour of healing with all of you. Some other asks are that folks read our seniors resource guide, which you've seen today, and contribute. It's a living document and meant to be updated by the community it serves. Take our outreach survey so that we can have a public-facing document for seniors in our community. Take our training workshops that Carmel alluded to, which will be offered in the fall. Read our community needs assessment, take on one of the 13 calls to action and collaborate with us. And it would not be my duty as, I would not be fulfilling my duty as chair if I didn't ask for your donations. We run almost entirely on donations. If anything we've talked about today or any of the other impressive work JQT does in service of our community moves you, please consider supporting us. Thank you.
That was kind of a mic drop, wasn't it? I don't really know how to follow that up. So we want to discuss. We want to have questions. Yes, no? Is there a mic that's going to float around the room? Sure.
So we were thinking, because we don't want to lose people in the Zoom room or here, but if it's possible to create a circle, maybe some of these chairs here and these two front tables can go on the other side, and then the folks over there can stay the same. We're going to have a mic that will be passed around. You can also at this time take some more nosh, take some more food. I know the folks in Zoom land don't have food, but maybe grab something, go to the washroom. And then I think that reiterate the point of this conversation.
Hello to our Zoom faces. Nice to have you guys joining us on the big screen as we form a circle in the room. So to provide some context while we're getting settled, our hope for this next discussion and sharing is that we come out of this with some actionable, sustainable guidance of what we can do to continue to move this conversation and this important work forward. So that's our objective. How will folks on Zoom let us know if they have a question? Will you put it in the chat? and or raise your hand, we can do that. But I'm going to start with, does anyone on Zoom want to say anything since you have just sat quietly for an hour and 15 minutes? Are there any questions or comments from that group? Not seeing any? It's okay, you don't have to.
All right, you're on, Dahlia.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about, okay, at the end of life. So I'll just go very straightforward, okay, and ask a question. And if anyone can answer. We are Carmel's parents. I'm Jewish, and Meneo is Jewish by osmosis. What doesn't matter. He's not Jewish. I want to be buried. It doesn't matter where, but I would like to have a Mogen David on my stone, and I would like that Meneo would be buried beside me. Now, is there a rabbi who would conduct a Jewish ceremony on a non-Jewish burial area, or a designated Jewish burial area within more of a general a burial area which accepts anyone who wants to be buried there. So the bottom line is, would a religious Jewish person, a rabbi, would step on a general burial area to conduct some prayers where...
Okay, Mom, I think we understand the question, and it's a very relevant one, as a lot of people in our community are in mixed relationships. Is there anyone here who would like to answer? Howard.
Well, thanks for your question. It's a bit of a difficult question to answer without getting into more detail. But if you are looking for a rabbi to perform a burial, the question also needs to be asked is, are you going to have a tahara? Is there going to be a whole Jewish, are you going to do that? I mean, what do you exactly want for yourself? If you want to have a Magen David on top of your casket and put on your headstone, that's something that you can arrange with your family to do. We would never have any input into that. But if you are looking for the ability to be buried next to somebody who's not Jewish by birth or conversion, that's going to be a little bit more challenging. But there is one synagogue that does have an interfaith burial section. I'm not saying there won't be others in the future. You're still very young. You have many, many years ahead of you, God willing, and who knows where we'll be. But there's only one synagogue now that has an interfaith burial section. That's the Temple Shalom. You would have to talk to them about that. Oh, and I'm sorry, and Or Shalom. Or Shalom, you have so you know what? I'm going to hand this over to Hannah, over to Rabbi Dresner. Can you, I mean, maybe you're better to answer this.
I'll just say very briefly that Or Shalom has a section for interfaith burial. However, folks buried in the Or Shalom cemetery are members of Or Shalom. And there are certain stipulations of how long you need to be a member in order to be buried there. And we would require tahara and all of the rites of Jewish burial for the Jewish member of that couple. There would also be stipulations for the non-Jewish member like the simplicity, the same kind of a simple pine box and the humility of the burial, but no Tahara ritual. So that would be my answer. And Temple Shalom probably has a very similar answer.
I wanted to add for people who are listening in that our resource guide, the seniors resource guide, goes into great detail for each synagogue. We asked each synagogue anywhere from like, you have to be a member in good standing for the past 5 years prior to your death and that kind of thing. So it's all listed there for people to talk. Mom, you've already asked a question. Let's see if there's anybody else in the Zoom room. Oh, actually, Rabbi Hannah would like to respond just a little bit more.
So the first question I think on the list is what can people do to get ready? I do think that, it's not just buying plots, but for some people, it might be creating affiliations with synagogue communities. So, some synagogue communities like Or Shalom have an extremely low financial barrier to membership. And that's a way to ensure a certain degree of communal care is to bring yourself into association with a spiritual community.
Just going to add one more thing to Howard and Rabbi Dresner's answer, and that is a plug for end-of-life doulas, because these are people that can also help you organize that, to connect with the synagogues, to connect with the people you need to connect with in order to prepare for burial way ahead of time. Like, you can start in your 20s and 30s. You don't have to be a senior to be doing that. So that's just a plug for looking for people who can guide you through the process and prepare well in advance.
Thank you. That was instructive. How about that? Anybody in our circle have any question or comment?
Hi, I'm Charlesie. Pronouns are she, her. I was actually been working with Phil, because we can't see, for a while, trying to again parse the issues for queer and trans Jews, especially as we're sort of in the younger cohort of that. But I did have a question for Shart Tzedek. I was very briefly part of Chevra Kadisha a long time ago. Hi, Lianne, for a very brief second. So had a little bit of knowledge around that. But I have a question about liturgy, because both Howard and Lianne, you both have said that you bury everyone, which we know, but I'm just have a question around, is the liturgy that is being provided for, or potentially for any of our trans members of our community, is it going according to genitalia? Because I know you're talking about creating a non-binary liturgy, but what if for someone who has, is just like a trans man? Is it like, how have those discussions been happening, or if they've happened, or what are our thoughts around that?
Thanks, Charlesie, and hi. Good to see you. So yes, so liturgy for trans folks is not going to go by genitalia. It's going to go by how they present in life. So if someone identifies as a trans man passes, they will have the liturgy of that would be used with men, and same with trans women. So that would be the non-binary liturgy is using the same liturgy we have. Again, we're working under an Orthodox umbrella, so we've got it, there's no changing for us, there's no changing the liturgy dramatically, but we can take out things like ben or bat, like who use, someone the son of or the daughter of, and we can use the child of, when we talk about, who their name. And then there are passages from Shir Shirim, the Song of Psalms, where there is a verse said specifically about the body, about the male body or the female body, that we can say both to in a non-binary situation. So we're looking at those kinds of ways of using the existing liturgy, because again, as an Orthodox organization, we can't change the liturgy, and so we're looking at using that. That's not to say that moving forward, another Chevra Kadisha or a secondary Chevra Kadisha wouldn't change the liturgy. I know there are lots of different liturgies in the States for queer and trans Chevra Kadishas. That's way different than ours. But with what exists now, that's what we're using. Does that? Okay, thanks.
So my follow-up question then for everyone here talking about this is, will this information be made available on the website of Shaare Zedek Cemetery site? And, you know, to say like, if you are trans or non-binary, these are the things that will be done for you in your death.
Well, I don't know. That's the best answer I can give you. We don't put much on our website that deals with what goes on, what we refer to as in the Chevrah Kadisha area of the building. The only thing I would say is that we are working hard to serve our entire community, and we'll do it with the utmost of respect and dignity for everybody. But we are not likely to become we're not likely to start to put information about what goes on in the Tahara and the liturgy and all these things out there for dissemination. It's Chevrah Kadishas have traditionally, for those of you who may know or are unaware, operate in a very, I'm not going to use the word secret, but we work in a very private setting. In fact, Chevrah Kadisha members are not generally recognized except during certain times of the year, such as Zion Adar, which is coming up this next month, or Parsha Chayas Sarah, which happens in the fall. So the Chevrah Kadisha operates without accolade, in a quiet way. So we don't really promote on our website how we function, much like people who make hot dogs don't show you videos of how they make them in their factories. And I know that's a bit of a disgusting analogy, but the fact of the matter is, we operate the way Chevrah Kadisha have operated for 3,500 years. The system that has worked so well, and the system that is so envied by other people in other communities, non-Jewish communities, who have, when a loved one dies, have to sort things out from the start. They have to figure out every little detail of how they're going to memorialize that person. Whereas how lucky we are, particularly in Vancouver, where we have one casket, we have one service, we do one thing, and we do it well. And we've been doing it for, not here in Vancouver for 3,500 years, but as long as there's been Jews here. And of course, we have representation from all the denominations. Our Chevrah Kadisha is made up of people from every synagogue around. And I would also say that, you know, Rabbi Dresner and I have a, you know, we've worked together on some things. We're trying to work together in certain ways. We're so fortunate in our community that we're not siloed depending on the kind of Jew you are. In our community, everybody who's Jewish is treated with exactly the same, in the same way. So I don't think we're going to publicize on our website how we do things and what that liturgy is, just for that reason.
So I want to respect the protocols and the secrecy and the wanting to keep things the way that they are. One of the needs in our community needs assessment by elders is, it actually is one of the most common, was to have, you know, clear descriptions for community members such as trans and non-binary people of what is available to them, and that they're thought of in the consideration. And so we're looking at websites, we're looking and going through the pages to see what information is available to us. And if we don't see that there has been some sort of indication that there has been some discussion even behind closed doors, then we don't know about it. And so I think it's important for like today for us to have these conversations, so that what I'm understanding is that it's a case by case ad hoc type of arrangement. If someone is trans or non-binary, it's up to the individual and their families to work with you on how the bodies are prepared. Is that correct?
This point, you know, pardon us, we're new at all this in some respects. We've been doing this for, you know, we've dealt with this issue for a number of years, and it doesn't come up all that often, but it comes up. And we're always going to work with families and I mean, it's not just it's not just for issues that are important to this group of people. There's others in our community who have specific needs and issues that come up. And while we service the entire community, we also look at people as individuals, and we work with those individuals to make that work. My recommendation to anybody who has a belief that they need to be cared for in a specific way is to reach out to us, and we can make those arrangements and understand it. And then, I mean, I'm not far off the mark. I mean, we want to serve, every Jew has every Jew has the right to a proper Jewish burial. Now, we do ours at an Orthodox standard, but we serve the entire community regardless of that. So, it's the best way I can put it, and I'm not sure how I can be clearer.
This is related to this, and then we've got Sil, who's waiting in the Zoom also for a question.
So as a heterosexual interfaith marriage person, I had no idea. I'm just telling you that there's no signaling in the messaging that you're giving that it's a place even I would be welcome. So it may not be that you need to lay all your policies out for the whole world to see, but there are subtle ways we can signal. Thank you for nodding. I appreciate that. That you're a place that's even willing to have that conversation. I just assumed it was off the table. So I'm going to give it to you.
I'm just going to echo what Lisa just said. As a trans Jewish person in this community, I would never contact Sharat Tzedek and inquire. I would be terrified to do so. And I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that I wouldn't be welcome. And so I think if there is some small signaling to let us know that there's an opening there, that we have been thought of, just even that we've been thought of, I think you'd be surprised about how many of us would be, will walk through that door.
People they scrutinize the pictures, the logos, the graphics. People are looking for a signal that, yeah. Okay. We have a question from Sil on our Zoom room.
Hi, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Sil, are you there?
Yeah, I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go for it.
Okay. Hi. This is just a gentle question, knowing that this is extremely tender and challenging sort of conversation, and it can hit people in a very intense way. So I heard, Lianne, and I've heard from you before, that your women's Chevra is serving both men and women in the trans space. Is there a space for the men's Chevra to be serving trans men?
That's really complicated. But right now, no. I would have to say no. I guess I can explain why. I think men, again, women can do halachically, according to Jewish law, can do taharas on either gender. They can, and men can't. So if someone, presents in life as male but hasn't surgically transitioned, men wouldn't be able to prepare their body. And so in that case, I guess if you want to be a stickler for it, yes, it's based on genitalia. But that's what we've got right now in our community. That's how I can answer.
I have a question. Has the Chevra ever considered creating a trans team, considering that there's not really a halachic issue about Jewishness, but more like a question of who would it be appropriate to see and prepare bodies? It might be an interesting thought.
No, again, we have and have come up with the women being the trans team. Like it's who are trans doing the work. We have not gotten to that point of talking about it. No.
So awesome that we're even talking about this. I just want to remind you that there's so few spaces where we can have these kinds of conversations. And as your moderator, my job is to keep us focused, that we are looking for guidance on something actionable that we can take from this to move this conversation forward. So if you can please have that in mind as we keep having this conversation. As your timekeeper, we have about 20 minutes left. Who's next?
It's open. Andrea, go for it. Yes, and Andrea, we see your hand up.
Hi, yes. Yes, I haven't said much. I just wanted to listen and learn, but I just wanted to say that I'm very excited about the resource guide. I'm working with Jewish Family Services to create a resource guide for death and dying resources. And I think it sounds absolutely phenomenal and I can't wait to see it. And also thank you for this discussion today.
Thank you very, very much. I sent you the link, I believe, to the resource guide. So if you click on there, you'll be able to see it. And there's more than just the 2 chapters that we addressed today. Simple things like getting your will prepared, and then the decline that happens from there. Okay, I see you, Mom. You want to go for it? Keep it short, though. Oh, you're muted, so you need to unmute.
Mute.
Oh, almost there. We hang on one more time. Go for nope, not yet. Yes, there we go. Don't touch anything anymore.
Okay. Please show me some respect like you do with all the rest, okay? I have a very important question from a religious point of view. Would a rabbi, ordinated rabbi, will he be allowed to step on a burial area in a graveyard which is not designated for Jewish burial? Is he forbidden from going on a regular graveyard to say a prayer or two without the person who died having to go through all the tahara procedures and so on? Is there a restriction? Like a Cohen cannot go on a burial, right? A non-Jewish burial. Or no, Jewish burial. Do you know, any one of you know if
I'm
there
looking
is
to see who's willing to answer this.
If you're asking if a rabbi can go to a funeral of a non-Jew and be in a non-Jewish cemetery, of course. That's not a problem.
Would he be allowed to say some prayers on, I'm Jewish and I want to be buried, not necessarily, I don't care right now, but let's say I'm in a non-Jewish burial ground. Would the rabbi be allowed or feel according to the halacha, if he can say a prayer, you know?
Yes.
I don't know how to be.
It depends on the denomination. Okay, a Reform rabbi could certainly go and say Kaddish.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I can add a little bit of color to that. You know, I don't believe, and I am not an expert on halacha, but I would say that there is no, you would have to talk to, you'd have to talk to the specific rabbi. Some rabbis would feel that a Jew being buried in a non-Jewish cemetery is not something that they would want to in any way participate in. Other rabbis would. It's going to come down to the individual rabbi and their feelings about that particular topic.
It's more minhag.
I don't even think it's minhag. I think it comes down to individual. It's certainly not halacha. It's not halacha. Well, a minyan for saying Kaddish is going to be, and Kaddish is another issue altogether. And if you're going to count a minyan with only men, then you'll count a minyan with only men. If you're going to count anybody who happens to be Jewish, then some rabbis will do that. Some rabbis will include men and women. So it really comes down to the individual rabbi and their personal belief on it. There's no rule that I can impose and tell a rabbi, you have to go to that cemetery because you have to say prayers at that funeral. It's going to come down to the individual.
Where it would be difficult is if there's a cremation and the remains are being buried. That's where it becomes more complicated.
Can I respond? As a non-clergy person who grew up in a small rural area, there are rabbis who will do what you're asking because otherwise they have no choice. So I don't, for the reality of the people who are here who are serving Vancouver, these are the structures that they're in. But trust me, I am related to clergy in small towns that are doing all sorts of creative ways to serve Jewish families on death. There are 100 different ways to work around that one. Yeah, right. Anyone else?
Thank you. So I read in the JQT Seniors Guide about also cost of burial. And I am wondering, as somebody who's relatively new to the community, what degree of discretion or flexibility there is or there can be, especially because many queer and trans folks don't have the same degree of financial status coming in. And so what, for that community, what kind of support or flexibility is there for Jewish burial?
Glad you came.
I am. So cost of burial is cost of burial. So speaking for the Shared Tzedek Cemetery Board, which is a community cemetery. So we, unlike a lot of the synagogues where you have to be a member, with the Shared Tzedek cemeteries, any one of our three, you do not have to be a member. You simply have to be Jewish by birth or conversion. And we have three cemeteries and they each have different prices. Here at Mountain View, the cost is $27,000 just for the plot, and the funeral's another $13,000. That's $40,000. In New Westminster, $27,000 for the plot and the funeral, so it's $14,000 and $13,000. And we have a cemetery in Surrey where the price is $7,500 for the plot and $13,000 for the funeral, so that's $20,500. What I will say is this: we work with the Ministry of Social Development for people who are, generally speaking, have no assets and are living on a monthly, typically in the system of to some degree, and the government pays for those funerals, the plot and the funeral. And of course, we perform a proper Jewish burial, the same as we would provide for a billionaire who dies in the community. We don't differentiate the type of funeral regardless of how much someone can pay. So our lowest cost cemetery is our one in Surrey, and that's $20,500. Having said that, there's options available, and this is not to any community. This is to every community. People can pay for those services over extended periods of time. You can pay for it over 5 years, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, however you want to do it. We try to make it as affordable and easy from a cash flow perspective as we possibly can, because there are lots of people who are financially not able to write a check for $20,000, $500 today. We also look at individuals and their real ability to pay at the time. A lot of people don't find themselves in the situation where the government is going to pick up the cost, and others don't have the ability to write the check for $20,000 right off the bat. This is typically for people who have not pre-planned. So we will work with families and we'll work with individuals to come up with a price that works. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to put those left behind into a financial stressful situation to pay for a funeral. We give everybody, every Jew who wishes to be buried as a Jew will be buried as a Jew, and we don't care how much they can pay. Is really the bottom line. Cases are looked at one by one in that situation. But a lot of people can pay over 5 years on a monthly basis. And so there's lots of options available. I encourage anybody to prepay their funeral costs. You know, there's lots of reasons to get these things done and out of the way. One is I'm marketing here. One is you can lock in today's price, because I'll tell you, you're a young guy and you know, the price is going to be more down the road. So you can lock in today's price and pay for it over 5 years. It also gives you the ability to pay for it over an extended period of time. Whereas if somebody passes away without any pre-need in place, meaning it's been prearranged, it's then called an at-need arrangement. We can't give somebody 5 years we can't give the estate or the family or others 5 years to pay. But the most important benefit of prepaying and taking care of your final needs is that your family or those left behind don't have to deal with the financial while we're dealing with the burial, which we have to take care of very, very quickly. So there's great reasons to plan these things in advance. And, you know, listen, from the Shared Tzedek Cemetery Board perspective, you can call me and we can work out something that works for you. And, but money will never, I cannot stress this enough. Our organization is rooted in Judaism and love and taking care of our community. And money is not a consideration for those where money is a consideration. Best way I can put it.
It's been a while since I read through the JQT Senior Resource Guide, and I don't know if you all have read your sections in it lately, but it occurred to me that this might be an opportunity to go on the website, read the responses that were submitted on behalf of your various organizations, and see if they are as inclusive and reflective of what's really happening. And I'm not accusing of, I can't remember. It's been a while since we put that together, but it's a living document when we continually look at it and make sure that it's reflecting how we are actually serving the community. So we have a few minutes left. I'm wondering if we have any reflections or realizations from having sat here for a couple of hours that anybody would like to share before we disperse.
Sharon Johnson speaking on behalf of the BC Community Response Networks. And I'd like to say, when we provide project funding for coordinated community responses for groups such as this is a new topic for me per se with the Jewish piece, very educational and very important. Our mission is to deal with vulnerable adults, and clearly there's a lot of vulnerabilities in conversations like this. So thank you very much, and for creating space, and we're happy to put some funding into these initiatives. Carmel is our coordinator, or your coordinator, and it's been great. So thank you so much. I know now how to talk to many of my Jewish friends.
I'm so glad you're here. I didn't realize that was who you are, but yes, we've written to them a couple of times asking for funding. So yay, I'm glad you're here and that you understand perhaps in a deeper way this very little important population that wants to be seen, heard, and respected. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Thanks. I'm Pat Gill from Or Shalom. I'm on the our cemetery committee at Or Shalom. And I just want to say that I totally respect and appreciate everything that Sherat Tzedek does for the Jewish community, how inclusive you are. And I'm learning today even more about what y'all do. And it's a great service to the Jewish community. Thank you.
This is right in my face. Hello, everybody. So what I wanted to share in our closing remarks is when we talk to people in our community, often there's just a lot of fear and a lot of unknown, not knowing who to approach, who to contact, who would be a safe person or organization to approach to ask these questions. And part of what JQT is now serving is being this bridge between our worlds and asking these questions, the difficult questions, so that people can make informed decisions. They can now know what is and is not available to them, so they can pre-plan. Planning in advance, like Howard said, is the most important thing that you can do. And it's also the same message that we have in our seniors resource guide, is you must not leave this for your loved ones to take care of after you die. And so I just wanted to appreciate everyone for coming here and having this open dialogue. And before we go, I heard one action item from Lisa suggesting to look over the responses that we sent out to you, I think in 2022. Yeah. So things may have changed since 2022 when you responded last, and we're more than happy to update the sections of for the different synagogues, for the different Chevra Kadisha. Any other action items that we can think of to help guide the JQT Seniors Initiative?
I think Howard and I, we can look at the website and maybe make it more reflective of what the community needs to see in order to feel more welcome.
Anything else from anybody else? Those are two very, very good actionable items. Anybody online looking online?
Carmel there, Kalina Kwan said on the on the chat that she wanted to acknowledge that BC CBR also has Joanna Lee, our Vancouver mentor, and Andrea from Maple CRN here with us, in addition to Sharon and herself. So thank you, and this has been very informative.
Oh, it's wonderful. We're very thankful. So BCCRN provided us funding for the creation of the Seniors Resource Guide, and then gave us funding for the outreach survey, which we're currently doing, which will create a forward-facing document and resource for people to find out where is more inclusive senior care being provided across the province. And then we have now going to ask again, thanks in advance, for another grant so that we can offer training in the fall for people.
And I would be remiss without those names being mentioned. Gloria Gutman's on the call. She's on our board of directors.
Gloria is also a member of the JQT Seniors Initiative, and we're very thankful for that. There's a bunch of people who are involved in the Seniors Initiative. Maybe that could be another action item that I just thought of. Are you interested in joining our JQT Seniors Initiative and having a representative from the Chevrah Kadisha on our committee? Because I think that would be very helpful in trying to catch everyone. Yeah. Okay, anything else online? I'm very happy to have folks joining us from across Canada, and the sun is now shining. So I encourage you all to—
Can I just share one more thing from the group chat?
Yeah, go ahead, Maxa.
Andrea said that the South Vancouver Seniors Network is a collaboration of 33 nonprofits serving seniors, and we will be inviting JQT to present about the resource guide in our weekly live webinar.
Woo, that's exciting. Thank you. No, we'd be happy to. Also, I know that we sent our guide to the BCCRN network as well, and that's too just a lot of organizations across the province. And so Joanna Lee, thank you very much for sending that around. Before we leave, and I'll let Lisa close thoughts, there are bagels, full spread, 2 different types of smoked salmon. Please do enjoy some goodies on your way out. And here's Lisa.
Okay, so I'm going to remind you that there's a recording of this presentation that will be available on the JQT website and also on the JQT YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and listen again or point someone else to it, remind you to please go to the JQT website to learn more about the JQT Seniors Initiative, to look at the Senior Resource Guide, and to take the outreach survey. We are planning this training workshop in the fall in BC for people in healthcare to help increase their understanding and awareness of the unique and important issues around dying and death for Jewish, queer, and trans community members. Help us identify who we should be inviting to this, please. Encourage your healthcare providers to attend because, as you know, knowledge is power. There are too many people who are afraid to say they're Jewish and afraid to say what their sexual preference, orientation, and life is, or are not living their authentic lives, and we want to support them. They may be scared to come out to you, or they may be scared to come out as Jewish, and your input is what's most important to us. So thank you all for coming today very much.